So, the title for this presentation for today is Three Ways to Boost Your Performance in Your Workday. And there are a couple of things that I would like to talk about before we get started with this actual presentation. First of all, productivity is always personal. No matter how great advice you hear someone telling you, like in this presentation, for instance, or if you go to a seminar, or if you go to a class training or whatever. So you always have to remember that productivity is personal, and what it means is that when you hear a strategy, you have to implement it in your own way, meaning that I can only give you some rough guidelines how to do things, but you always have to remember that people are different and our environments are different, and therefore a certain piece of advice could work for some people, as is, but then for someone else it might not work at all. So your responsibility is to listen and watch to this presentation and take these strategies and then implement them in your own way, because that's the best way to make changes that stick, and that's the best way to improve your performance. Another thing is that your responsibility is to actually implement this stuff in practice, because otherwise, if you're just listening and if you're just watching, you are not making yourself any more productive that way. You have to take action on these things. And what I suggest is that you just pick one of these strategies and you put them into practice. And then when you feel comfortable, then you move on to the next thing, so that you are not overwhelming yourself with too much information at once. Finally, I could speak hours and hours and days about personal productivity, but I decided that I want to apply something called the 80-20 rule. And basically what it means is that if you focus on 20% of things, you get 80% of results. And I decided that these three things that I'm going to talk about today are definitely those things that can give you big results in your everyday work. Like I have written books like 101 productivity tips or 222 productivity tips to improve your performance, but I just wanted to pick those three things, like this 20% of things that you can put into practice. Okay, great. This is what I wanted to say first. We already talked about a little bit about myself and who I am. Not only am I into productivity and into blogging and such things, I'm also into endurance sports and spending time with my family. And I think that this is also one of those things that you should remember, that you should have a great balance between your work and your personal life. And when you do things which are outside of the office, they can actually give you so much more creativity and so much more power and energy that it's also a great way to boost your daily work performance. Okay, but here are actually the three things that I wanted to talk about: planning your days, getting enough sleep, and scheduling your email checking times. And let's start with the item number one, which is planning your days. Now, there was a time in my life when I was very disorganized. I didn't have any plans, I didn't have any goals, and therefore I really couldn't get anything done, and I was procrastinating a lot. But one of the first changes that I made, and this was back in 2006, 2007, when I started reading about personal productivity and time management, was that I started having a daily task list. And with this very, very simple practice, I was able to get so much more focus to my days. And this is exactly what you should do as well, because quite often a typical workday could be like when you go to the office. So the first thing that you do is that you grab a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and then you open your email application and start reading the email messages, and all of a sudden you realize that it's already noon and you really haven't touched those important things that needs to be done. So having a simple plan in place can definitely be a game changer here. And I suggest that you start out with small steps. And basically what it means is that you write down at the end of the workday or at the beginning of the workday. It doesn't matter really which way you do it. I prefer to do it at the end of the workday. 3 important things that you want to accomplish that day, and also include a couple of other lower priority tasks to your list as well, because that's where you know which things that you should be focusing on. And your job is to make sure that you give enough time for those tasks so that you actually get them done. Now, of course, in our everyday work life, there are situations when things just come up, and there is no way that you can prepare for everything. So it's totally fine that exceptions are coming, and you just have to deal with it. But if you can focus, say, 70 or even 80% of your time on the things that you have put on your task list or your plan for the day, I can guarantee that you are making a lot of progress and you're getting a lot of right type of work done. Another great point when it comes to having a task list is that you can't use the excuse "I forgot to do something." It's not an option anymore, because when you have planned your day in advance, you have things say on a piece of paper, and you have written down those important things that you want to focus on. So there is an evidence on that very paper that you actually planned to do this one thing for the next day, and then you can't use this very excuse that I forgot to do something, but rather it's a great way to also take ideas or things out of your mind and put them to a paper so that you can actually remember to do them the next day. I mentioned that you can use a pen and paper approach when it comes to planning a task list, and that's totally fine. But you can also use a task management software. There's plenty of task management apps on the internet, so it really doesn't matter which one you use, which type of approach you take. What matters the most is that you actually start planning your days, and try to keep things simple, like having those three important things on your list, and then maybe a couple of lower priority things on that list as well, because you have to remember something. It's not just those important things that you have to finish, but there are also those lower priority ones. And very often what happens is that we have a tendency to postpone those less important things. But what might happen is that the more you postpone those lower priority things, they might turn into something very big and urgent on one day. So you want to make sure that you make progress on every level.
Timo, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
In terms of, because you mentioned the task management software, and I know there's so many different apps out there, like, I don't know, Trello, for example. There's so many. Are there any particular ones that, for somebody who is probably just starting to get into this, that might be, I suppose, an easy entry level one to use?
Yeah, so I have used an application called Nozbe, Nozbe. That's the way it's spelled. I believe that it's a commercial piece of software, so that you have to pay a monthly subscription. And of course, can be wrong because it has been like a couple of years since I last used it. So I can't be totally sure if it's a paid one or not. But it used to be. Another one, and this is the tool that I'm using right now, is called Todoist, and it's also a great one. It's a very simple and easy to use type of software. And then the third option, something that I have also used myself in the past, and it's a free one called Wunderlist.com. So those three ones. Actually, Wunderlist written with the letter U as the second letter, so it's not Wunderlist but Wunderlist or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
So those three options are great ones if you are just starting out with planning your days and having a task list. I would definitely recommend those three, and you just have to check and see. At least Wunderlist is free, but those two other pieces of software, they if I'm correct, they actually cost you some money to use. So
excellent.
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Good. Yeah. So then there is something else that a principle that you have to remember when you are planning your task list, and I think that this works a little bit better when you have a paper-based task list. I'm talking about a closed task list, and this is something that I learned from an author called Mark Forster, who has written a great book called "Do It Tomorrow" and Other Secrets of Time Management. And the basic idea of a closed task list is that when you plan the task list for the next day, you draw a line under the last task on that list. So it's a closed one. And what it means basically is that you are not allowed to enter any new tasks to your list throughout the day. Because a very typical way of working is that even though if you have a task list and then something new comes up, so you add it at the end of the task list. And you realize that your task list is actually much longer at the end of the workday than what it was when you started your workday. So with that very simple type of approach, you take out the stress of being overloaded with tasks, and you are making a decision. Like I would say that 80 to 90% of the time, those things that come up throughout the day are not super critical or super urgent. So you can actually postpone them a little bit by scheduling them till the next day. But with this very simple practice, you can make sure that you are on top of your work, and that the number of items on your list doesn't grow considerably. Another reason why you should do this is that you could be working very hard on your tasks and you're very busy and doing a lot of work, and then at the end of the workday you realize that, hey, like I had 5 tasks on my list and I still have 5 tasks to go. And I have been working like crazy. So what did happen? So with this very simple practice, you are actually making a decision to move those things till the next day, and you are not overloading yourself with too much work. So it's a very simple practice, but it's a very effective one. Finally, when it comes to task lists, and especially those important tasks, not only you should try to prioritize them till the beginning of your workday, meaning that if you have an important task that you have to accomplish the next day, try to schedule it till the morning the next day, so that you get it done before anything else comes up. And another thing, and especially when it comes to these important things, is to use time blocking. It's a fancy way of saying that you are just reserving a time block on your calendar. Let's say that you need to accomplish this important thing the next day, and then you decide that, hey, for the next 90 minutes tomorrow morning, I'm working only on this task. So you are making a decision to work on this one task only. So you block that time out of your calendar, and then when your colleague accesses your calendar, and he or she sees that, okay, well, he's working on something very important and I shouldn't disturb him. So time blocking is definitely an activity that I use quite a lot. There is a lot more to time blocking, like picking the right type of environment to your work. It could be like working remotely from home, or booking a meeting room in an office to get some privacy, or things like that. But I would definitely use time blocks when it comes to those important tasks that needs to get done. But anyway, these are really the principles that I use personally when I'm planning my days. Because without a plan, I would be just wandering around and I didn't know what to do. So with this very simple practice, it's you get so much more focus and clarity to your work days. Good. It's time to move on to the slide number 2, and that's basically getting enough sleep. Now, this is something that I have experimented just recently, and I made a shift of going to bed around midnight till going to bed around, I don't know, 10 to 10:30 p.m., like 1 hour to 1.5 hours earlier. And it has made a dramatic difference to my performance and the way that I'm able to get done the next day. Because very often we have internet, we have television, and it's very easy and simple to just watch a TV show or a movie on your television, only to realize that it's already midnight, and then you should get up early the next day. And we all know what happens. You wake up early, you wake up the next morning, and the alarm clock is basically interrupting your sleep, and you feel very tired. And when you go to work, you are then unable to focus on your work because you are tired, and your memory doesn't function properly. And there are lots of different things that happen when you are not getting enough sleep. But really making this decision of shutting down your computer or television, say 1 hour earlier, can make a huge difference to your sleep. And currently what happens to me is that when I go to bed around 10 to 10:30 p.m., I wake up somewhere between 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. naturally without an alarm clock. And that's a huge difference, because there was a time when I used to get up very early, but I didn't go to bed early enough, and I became super tired, and I had huge difficulties of focusing on my work. But now I'm doing things different way, and it has made a huge difference to my life. Now, there are people who operate better in the evening, and because of that, they like to get into bed also later and get up later, and that's totally fine. But I would say that you should also try to figure out if getting to bed late is something related to your current lifestyle, like it was in my situation. I thought that I was a late riser or a night owl myself, but I was very successful of changing my daily rhythm and making this very simple decision of not watching television, or watching it some other time, recording those shows on my digital set-top box. So it would definitely, and it definitely makes a big difference to my well-being. But I have also included other tips that have a big difference to your personal productivity and increase the quality of your sleep, and especially those ones that I have bolded on this list, like not drinking coffee too late, or not having too heavy meals, or not drinking liquids after 8 p.m. And this is actually something that a website called WebMD suggested, and I have been following this advice for some time. So those things have made a big difference to my well-being, and it's really great because all of a sudden, when I get up earlier naturally without an alarm clock, I have some distraction-free time on my hands. Like I can go to gym or read a book or do whatever I like, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a program for your next day. All you have to do is, if you have some distraction-free time on your hands, all that's needed is that you can decide that, hey, tomorrow when I wake up naturally, I can, read the morning paper without any hurry, drink a cup of coffee, and then perhaps even go to work a little bit earlier, so that I can hopefully get back home from work a little bit earlier. So with this, 1 hour or even 30-minute shift can make a big difference to your daily life. Okay, good. That's what I wanted to talk about sleep. Sleep is definitely one of those cornerstones when it comes to personal productivity. Quite often people tend to focus on tips and tricks, and of course that's basically what this presentation is mostly about. But of course things like proper nutrition, getting enough exercise, socializing with other people, having a positive attitude towards life, those things can make a huge difference to your performance, and I would even say that they make a foundation to your personal productivity. But unfortunately, as we have a very limited time on our hands, I do not have some extra minutes to talk about these things. But if you want to build your productivity on a solid foundation, at least try to get enough sleep, because it seems that quite a few people are not getting enough sleep, and there has been numerous studies about different diseases that occur thanks to living a sleep deprived life and not getting enough sleep. So it's a very, very important principle to keep in mind.
It can really have knock-on effects as well, can't it, Tim? Because if you find yourself going to bed late, you get up late, and then you finish work late, and it becomes a cycle, does it not?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Perhaps this is just me, but I realized that if I make this conscious decision of turning off my electronics and TV set a little bit earlier, so it can have this cumulative type of effect on your days, and all of a sudden you realize that when you're able to get back home from work a little bit earlier, you have more time for your family or for your hobbies or whatever you want to do, after getting back home from work. So it can make a big difference to your well-being. Okay, good. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is email. Now, the thing is that email is really it's really a fundamental part of work life nowadays, and unfortunately, email can be a time suck, and it's very easy to spend hours and hours and hours of your time on email, but unfortunately, that very time is taken away from something else. Like, let's say that you have an important project that you should be focusing on, or you have some important tasks that should be finished. So unfortunately, email can be a time-sucking machine, and it can definitely make you less productive. But that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this very topic, because it seems that nowadays some people are getting even hundreds of emails per day, and they are having a constant struggle with email. And I think that when you have a very simple structure in place, things become much more easier, and email eats less of your daily work time. So I think that the strategy that I'm using is a very simple one. Well, first of all, it's all about deciding how many times per day you want to check your email, and this is very important because the way I used to work earlier was that I had my email client open all the time, and whenever a new message would land into my inbox, so I would get notified about it. And what would happen then was that I would, instantly take a look at this email message, and what would happen next is that maybe the email message would contain a link to a web page or a website, a very interesting website, and then I would follow it, and then all of a sudden I would realize that I had spent like 30 minutes on something non-relevant. But unfortunately, this is not a very productive way of spending your work days. And rather than doing that, try to make sure that you pick 1 to 3 times per day when you're checking your email. They could be like 30-minute time blocks at once. So with 3 times per day, it means 90 minutes of your time in your inbox. But it could be anything like 1 or 2 times as well. And when you have this structure in place, things become much more organized, and you are not spending your hours in your inbox, and you are actually making sure that those other important things that you should be focusing on are getting your undivided attention. That's very important thing. The second principle that I'm using is that I'm never starting my day with checking my email. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, of course. Like I remember this one time when I was on a vacation for 2 weeks, and then I went back to work, and I actually happened to remember the task that I was working on before I went to vacation, and I worked on this very task for 2 hours, and then I opened my email application the first time. And what did I see? I saw that there was a mail from the project manager, the project that I was working on, that the project manager had sent an email message telling me that do not work on this very task, and all I realized was that I had now spent 2 hours of my time on something that that wasn't really necessary. So there are of course exceptions to this rule, but on most of the times, do not start your days with email, because it can take your attention elsewhere from and especially elsewhere from those very important tasks, and you're not getting those planned things done. And really, like, this very simple thing is that you should only open your email client when you are processing your emails, or if you do not want to do that, just make sure that you are not getting those automatic notifications from your email software, because even with this very simple tweak, like turning off those notifications, they can make a big difference to your attention and to your focus. So that's of course something that you could consider as well. And I think that, when it comes to email, there is something that very quite rarely gets talked about, but I think that proper email management is also about setting the expectations straight. Like, if you have this new routine of checking your email like twice per day, so it's very important to let others know that you are working with this new schedule, because quite often what happens is that people or someone could send you an email message and they expect that you reply back to them as soon as possible. And when you have this new way of working, you could say that, hey, I'm checking my email once in the morning and once in the afternoon. So don't be upset if you are not getting a reply from me right away. So that way, when you train others, they know that you have this new way of working, and they are not mad at you because you didn't reply to them right away. It's really all about setting expectations, and I think that it's also setting expectations towards yourself, thinking that for instance that I must be so important that I have to reply right away, or I think that others are mad at me if I do not reply right away. But very very often it's not the case, and I think that it's also worth remembering that if there is something very, very urgent, critical, most likely the person is not going to send you an email about it. Rather, he or she is going to call you about it, and that's basically how things work. So it's also worth remembering. I have finally I have included simple steps that I use personally to process my inbox every time I open my email client. So whenever I open it, I scan through those headlines in my inbox, and very often it becomes quite obvious what messages I can either archive or delete right away. So I make sure that I scan through those headlines first, and then I decide which messages I'm going to keep and which ones are I'm going to archive or delete right away. Then another principle to keep in mind is that very often an email message can contain a task or an assignment. And it's important not to store those assignments or tasks inside your inbox, but rather take those things out of your email message and put them onto your task list, because that way you can actually remember those things later on. And especially if you're getting a lot of email messages on a daily basis, so there is a big possibility that you are losing that message or losing that assignment in a sea of emails, and actually extracting that email message and putting that task into someplace else improves the likelihood that you actually get the work done. You just take the assignment and schedule it on your calendar or on your task list, and then you get automatically reminded about it later on. And once you have done this, just archive the message and it's out of your inbox. So that's a very simple but effective way to also to keep your inbox clean. Finally, and this is especially if you are using Gmail, there's a great service called unroll.me where you can unsubscribe from multiple email lists at once. I actually belong to a lot of newsletters and to a lot of email lists, but at one point I realized that they were actually cluttering my inbox. So unroll.me is a great service. It can either help you unsubscribe from multiple email lists at once, or you can bundle all those newsletter messages into one single package which gets delivered to you on a daily basis. So it's a free service, and I definitely recommend that you use it. You may want to check the privacy settings of that service, because basically what happens is that unroll.me is you have to give access to this application to your email inbox, and of course if you feel uncomfortable of doing this, so in that case this service might not be for you, but if that's not an issue, so I recommend that you take a look at this service. Finally, and this is another important principle that I use myself. There are times when an email message, I mean, you just can't, like, let's say that you have scheduled a 30-minute time block for processing your emails, and then you encounter an email message which takes quite a long time to reply to. Let's say that the topic is very difficult and you have to think about it a little bit, or that there is just too much writing to be done, and it just takes too much of your time. So try to make sure that once again, schedule the time for replying to a message like this. And let's say that it means that you have to take like 45 minutes to write and reply to this, because you have to you have to think things out before you reply. So try to make sure that you use the time blocking that I talked earlier when it comes to replying to these types of messages. And once again, once you have scheduled the time for this type of a message, then archive the message so that it's not on your inbox anymore. And these are really the principles that I use myself. I have written a report, a free report which you can download, which helps you to improve your email productivity. And there is a little bit more about it on the last slide of this presentation. But really, this is really what personal productivity is all about. You can get started with these 3 simple steps and make sure to implement at least one of these things, and implement them your own way so that it's much easier to stick with those changes in your daily work life.